A quiet farmer faces down a gang of outlaws terrorizing the local market, hiding a deadly secret beneath his humble appearance. When they threaten the woman he cares about and set fire to his barn, will his forgotten Marine combat skills be enough to save her and stop their reign of terror? I never wanted any trouble. That's what I kept telling myself as I stacked the last crate of tomatoes at my market stall. The morning sun felt good on my face as I arranged my vegetables in neat rows. 20 years of working this land had given me calloused hands and a quiet life. That's all I wanted after what I'd seen overseas. Fresh produce. Get your fresh produce here. I called out to the passing shoppers. The Saturday market was buzzing with families picking through fruits and vegetables. Kids ran between stalls while parents chatted with neighbors. This small-town feeling was exactly why I'd chosen this life after taking off my uniform. I noticed them before they reached my stall. 3 men in black leather vests, moving through the crowd like wolves among sheep. People stepped aside, conversations hushed as they passed. The biggest one, with a thick beard and tattooed arms, walked straight up to my display and picked up a tomato. "Nice produce, old man," he said, squeezing the tomato until it burst in his hand. Red juice dripped between his fingers onto my carefully arranged display. "I'm Ryder. My friends and I are new in town." My jaw tightened, but I kept my face blank. "That'll be $2. The men laughed. The one called Ryder wiped his hand on my apron, leaving a red smear. "Funny guy. Listen carefully. We're providing protection for market vendors now. Insurance, you might call it." "Don't need insurance," I said flatly. "Sheriff's office does fine." Ryder's smile disappeared. He leaned closer. I could smell leather and cigarettes. "Sheriff can't be everywhere. Accidents happen. Fires start. Trucks break down." His finger jabbed into my chest with each threat. My heart rate didn't change. I'd faced worse than this bully in places most Americans couldn't find on a map. But I had promised myself no more violence. I had buried that version of myself when I hung up my dog tags. "I'll think about it," I said finally. "Don't think too long," Ryder replied, knocking over an entire crate of tomatoes with his boot. They rolled across the ground, some getting crushed under passing feet. "We'll be back this afternoon for our first payment. $500. Cash." I watched them move down the road to Sarah's flower stall. Sarah had been my neighbor for 5 years, her small greenhouse operation just down the road from my farm. She glanced nervously in my direction as the men approached her. "Jake," an older voice called from behind me. It was Frank, who sold honey at the stall opposite mine. Those are the same guys who showed up at the Miller farm last week. Day after old Miller refused to sell, his tractor mysteriously caught fire. I knelt down and began picking up my ruined tomatoes, keeping my eyes on Sarah's stall. She was shaking her head at something Ryder said. I didn't like how close he was standing to her. "I'll mind my own business," I told Frank, though my eyes never left Sarah. "That's what Miller said too," Frank muttered. I straightened up when I saw Ryder grab Sarah's wrist. Without thinking, I started moving toward her stall. "Everything okay here?" I asked, my voice carrying a tone I hadn't used in years. Ryder turned, still holding Sarah's arm. "Just explaining business to the flower lady. She seems confused about how things work now." "I think she understands fine," I said. "And I think you're done here." Something in my stance must have registered with him. His eyes narrowed as he gave me a longer look. He released Sarah's arm, but stepped closer to me. "You got some kind of hero complex, farmer?" he asked, poking a finger into my chest again. 20 years ago, I would have broken that finger before he knew what happened. Instead, I stood still, hands relaxed at my sides. "No heroes here. Just think the lady said no." Ryder's 2 friends moved to flank him. One was heavy-set with a shaved head. The other was younger, thin with nervous eyes. Something about him seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it. "We'll see you this afternoon, farmer," Ryder said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Both of you." He glanced at Sarah before walking away. Sarah's hands trembled as she rearranged her flowers. "Thanks, Jake." "Those men." She shook her head. "Lock your greenhouse tonight," I told her. "And maybe stay somewhere else." The market crowd slowly returned to normal as the 3 men left. But I noticed other vendors looking nervous, whispering among themselves. Some were already packing up, though the market would normally run for hours more. I returned to my stall and began cleaning up the mess. Under my faded flannel shirt, my shoulder ached where shrapnel had once torn through muscle and bone, a reminder of another life. By early afternoon, half the vendors had packed up and left. Those who remained looked over their shoulders constantly. I sold what I could and loaded the rest in my old pickup truck. As I closed the tailgate, Sheriff Patterson strolled by. Heard there was some trouble, Jake. Nothing serious, I said, though we both knew better. Can't do much without someone filing a complaint, he said, not quite meeting my eyes. I nodded. Small-town sheriff, not eager to tangle with organized trouble. I couldn't blame him. Just be careful, Jake, Patterson added. These aren't local boys looking for mischief. They've been moving through counties up north, causing real problems. As he walked away, I spotted the 3 men returning. They moved with purpose, Ryder in front, scanning the remaining stalls. His eyes locked with mine across the market. Jake, Sarah called, hurrying over to my truck. They're back. What are we going to do? I opened my glove compartment and pulled out the cash box where I kept my market earnings. $500 would wipe me out for the week. But what choice did I have? As the men drew closer, the younger one looked directly at me. There was something in his eyes, recognition. But how would he know me? I'd never seen him before today. Ryder stopped in front of us, hand extended. Payment time, farmer. Before I could respond, tires screeched to the market entrance. A black SUV with tinted windows pulled in, drawing everyone's attention, including Ryder's. Saved by the bell, he smirked. But we're not going anywhere. And now we know where your pretty friend works too. He nodded toward Sarah, whose face went pale. As they backed away toward the SUV, the young one glanced over his shoulder at me again. This time I caught it, the small scar above his right eyebrow. Memories flooded back of a burning transport vehicle, a young private screaming for help, my hands pulling him from the wreckage. Had he recognized me too? And if he had, what would happen when Ryder discovered a former Marine recon sniper was the quiet farmer he decided to threaten? The market closed early that day. Vendors packed up in a hurry, throwing nervous glances toward the black SUV still parked at the entrance. I took my time loading my truck, watching as the men from the SUV talked with Ryder's group. Something was happening in my quiet town, something that made my combat instinct stir after years of being buried. Need a hand? The voice startled me. Sarah stood behind my truck, arms wrapped around herself despite the warm day. Almost done, I replied, securing the last crate. You heading home? She nodded, but her eyes kept darting toward the men. Jake, I'm scared. They came to my greenhouse yesterday, before the market. Just looking around, they said, but the way they looked at me, my jaw tightened. I'll follow you home. Make sure you get in safe. Thanks, she whispered, then hesitated. There's something else. I overheard them talking about a meeting tonight at the Old Miller barn. Something big is happening. I helped Sarah enter her car and followed her down the county road toward our farms. The countryside looked peaceful, green fields stretching to the horizon, occasional farmhouses with smoke rising from chimneys. Hard to believe trouble had found its way here. After making sure Sarah was safely inside her house, I drove the half-mile to my own farm. The 2-story farmhouse needed painting, and the barn roof had a spot that leaked when it rained hard. But it was mine, paid for with years of military service and then honest work. Inside, I went straight to my bedroom and pulled an old trunk from under my bed. I hadn't opened it in years. The key was on my dog tag chain, which I kept in my nightstand drawer. My hands hesitated over the lock. You're not that man anymore, I reminded myself. But I opened it anyway. Inside lay the remnants of another life. My dress blues carefully folded, medals in their cases, a K-bar knife, and photos of young men in desert camo. Some of those men never came home. At the bottom, wrapped in cloth, was my Beretta M9. I kept it legally after discharge. Never thought I'd need it again. My phone rang. It was Sarah. Jake, she said, her voice trembling. They're outside my greenhouse. 3 trucks. They're unloading something. Lock your doors, I said, already moving. Stay away from windows. I'm coming. I threw on my jacket and headed for the door, then stopped. After a moment's hesitation, I went back and took the Beretta from the trunk checking that it was unloaded before slipping into my jacket pocket. Just having it close might be enough. The sun was setting as I drove the back way to Sarah's place, parking behind her house where my truck wouldn't be seen from the road. I moved silently around the edge of her property, keeping to the shadows of trees and outbuildings. Voices carried through the evening air. Ryder and his men stood around their trucks, parked near Sarah's greenhouse. The plastic covering reflected the glow of their flashlights inside. Perfect spot, Ryder was saying. Remote enough, but with access to the highway. We can move product through here without anyone noticing. The younger man, the one who looked familiar, spoke up. Maybe we should find somewhere else. There are empty buildings in town. Too visible, Ryder snapped. We need somewhere they won't look. And the flower lady's place is perfect. Once we explain how things work, she'll cooperate. I slipped closer, keeping low. They were sizing up Sarah's greenhouse for something illegal, drugs most likely, and they were planning to force her to let them use it. What if she calls the cops? The young man asked. Ryder laughed, a cold sound. Ooh, sheriff, do nothing. Besides, we'll make sure she understands what happens to people who don't cooperate. I'd heard enough. Moving back toward Sarah's house, I knocked softly on her back door. She opened it immediately, fear written across her face. They're planning to use your greenhouse for something illegal, I explained quickly. We need to call the sheriff. Sarah's laugh was bitter. Already did. He said he can't come out for suspicious vehicles without more evidence. So they probably just want to buy flowers. Then we need to get you somewhere safe tonight, I said. Pack a bag. While Sarah packed, I kept watch through the windows. The men were still outside, but now they were unloading large plastic bins from one of the trucks into the greenhouse. Whatever they were planning, it was happening now. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Sergeant Wilson? It's Tanner. Need to talk. Alone. Tanner. The name hit me like a punch. Private Daniel Tanner. The kid I'd pulled from that burning transport in Hellman Province. The thin young man with Ryder. That's why he looked familiar. The scar above his eyebrow was from that day. I texted back. South edge of property. 5 minutes. Come alone. Who was that? Sarah asked, returning with a small suitcase. Maybe our break, I replied. Change of plans. I'm meeting someone who might help us. You stay here, door's locked. Sarah grabbed my arm. Jake, be careful. There's something I need to tell you. A loud knock at the front door cut her off. We both froze. Sarah, open up. We know you're home. Ryder's voice boomed through the door. Go out the back, I whispered, pushing her toward the rear door. Take my truck. Keys are in it. Go to Frank's place. What about you? I'll handle this, I said, my voice dropping to a tone I hadn't used in years. As Sarah slipped out the back, I moved to the front hallway. The knocking had turned to pounding. Last chance before we come in anyway. Ryder shouted. I opened the door, standing squarely in the frame. Ryder's surprise was visible for only a second before his face hardened. Where's the flower girl? He demanded. Not here, I replied, and not coming back tonight. Ryder's eyes narrowed. This isn't your business, farmer. Step aside. Behind him stood the heavy-set man and 2 others I hadn't seen before. No sign of Tanner. I'm making it my business, I said, feeling a familiar calm settle over me. The calm before combat. This is private property. You're trespassing. Leave now. Ryder's laugh was ugly. Or what? You'll call the sheriff? I own him. No, I said quietly. I won't call anyone. Something in my tone made Ryder hesitate. He studied me with new interest. You're not just some hick farmer, are you? He asked. I said nothing, maintaining eye contact. Check him. Ryder ordered the heavy-set man, who stepped forward. I let him pat me down, finding the Beretta in my pocket. He pulled it out with a grin. Look what we got here, he said, handing it to Ryder. Playing soldier, farmer? Ryder examined the gun. Military issue. So you served. That's supposed to scare me. Just want you to leave, I said evenly. We don't need trouble here. Trouble already found you, Ryder sneered, pointing my own gun at me. Now where's the girl? A vehicle's engine roared to life, my truck starting. Ryder's head whipped around as headlights swept across the yard. Stop her, he shouted. 2 men ran toward the truck as Sarah gunned the engine. She swerved around their vehicles and headed for the road, but one of Ryder's men reached his truck in time to follow. Ryder turned back to me, fury in his eyes. Big mistake. Now you've got no ride, no gun, and a whole world of pain coming your way. He raised the Beretta. Something moved in the darkness behind him. Tanner appeared, his face conflicted. Ryder, he said, boss wants us at the barn. Now, says the buyers are arriving early. Ryder lowered the gun, but his eyes promised retribution. Your lucky day, farmer. But we'll be back. He tucked my Beretta into his belt. And tell your girlfriend, if she goes to the cops, we'll burn this whole place down. They left, engines revving as they pulled away. I waited until their taillights disappeared down the road before letting out the breath I'd been holding. A figure stepped out from the shadows of the barn. Sergeant Wilson. The voice was tentative. Haven't been called that in a long time, I replied, recognizing Tanner as he approached. You saved my life, he said. Afghanistan. The transport hit an IED. You pulled me out before the ammo cooked off. I nodded. What are you doing with these people, Tanner? His eyes dropped. Came home, couldn't find work. They offered me a job. Didn't know what they were really into until I was in too deep. He looked up, desperation in his eyes. It's bad, Sarge. Really bad. They're moving drugs through these rural counties, setting up labs in remote places. And they're not just threatening people. They've hurt folks who didn't cooperate. Why tell me this? I asked, though I already knew. Because they're planning something worse, Tanner said, his voice dropping. The boss is coming tonight with a shipment. And Ryder's been talking about making an example of someone who won't play ball. I think he means you or your friend. A cold knot formed in my stomach. When? Meetings at midnight. Old Miller barn. He glanced nervously over his shoulder. I gotta get back before they notice I'm gone. Tanner, I called as he started to leave. Why'd you join the Marines? He paused. To serve something bigger than myself. To do what's right. Shame crossed his face. I forgot that somewhere along the way. Not too late to remember, I said quietly. After he disappeared into the darkness, I walked to Sarah's greenhouse. Inside, the plastic container sat unopened. Whatever they were planning to store or manufacture here, it hadn't started yet. There was still time. My phone rang. Sarah. Jake. Are you okay? She asked breathlessly. I'm fine. Where are you? Frank's place. But Jake, there's something you need to know. When I said they came to my greenhouse yesterday, I didn't tell you everything. They were looking for someone specific. They asked if I knew a former Marine named Wilson. My blood ran cold. They were looking for me? Why? I don't know, Sarah said. But they had your picture. From your service days. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't random. They had targeted me from the beginning. But why? Who would know my background? And why would they care about a retired Marine turned farmer? As I stood there in the growing darkness, a car appeared at the end of Sarah's driveway, moving slowly with its lights off. It wasn't one of Ryder's trucks. This was something or someone new. The rear window rolled down as the car approached, revealing a face I hadn't seen in 15 years. Colonel Matthews, my former commanding officer. Get in, Sergeant, he called. We need to talk. I hesitated, remembering the last mission I'd run under his command. The one that had haunted my nightmares for years. It's about Operation Blackfish, he added. They found us, Wilson. All of us. The name of the classified operation hit me like ice water. If what he was saying was true, Ryder and his men weren't just drug dealers. They were something far more dangerous. And they hadn't come to town by accident. They had come for me. But why now, after all these years? Colonel Matthews looked older than I remembered. His once black hair was now mostly gray, and deep lines marked his face. But his eyes were the same, sharp and calculating. How did you find me? I asked as I slid into the back seat of his sedan. Same way they did, he replied. The driver, a young man in a plain suit, kept his eyes on the road as we pulled away from Sarah's farm. When someone starts looking into Blackfish, we get an alert. My mouth went dry. Blackfish has been buried for 15 years. The clock was ticking toward midnight as Sarah, Frank, and I huddled around my kitchen table. The two men who had burned my barn were locked in my root cellar, still unconscious. I can't believe Sarah was in the army, Frank said, shaking his head. 5 years you've been my neighbor, selling flowers, and never said a word. Sarah gave a small shrug. Some things are easier not to talk about. She glanced at me, and I nodded in understanding. 3 tours in Iraq, she continued. Combat medic. After what I saw there, I just wanted plants and quiet. I spread out a hand-drawn map of the Miller property on the table. The barn is here, surrounded by open fields. One road in, same road out. They'll have lookouts posted. Frank leaned forward, studying the map. There's an old drainage ditch that runs behind the property. Might give you cover to approach from the south. I raised an eyebrow at him. I used to hunt there as a kid, he explained. Old Miller didn't mind back then. My phone buzzed, a text from Tanner. 10+ men now. Heavy weapons. Meeting at midnight still on. I showed Sarah and Frank the message. This isn't just a drug deal. It's a war council. Ryan is bringing in his top people. And you're planning to take them all on? Sarah asked, concern evident in her voice. I've got backup coming, I assured her. Old friends. Good at this sort of thing. If they get here in time, she pointed out. My satellite phone rang. Cooper. Bad news, he said without preamble. We're grounded. Storm system between us and you. Air traffic control won't clear us. My heart sank. How long? 3 hours minimum. Maybe longer. I looked at my watch. Just past 10 p.m. Midnight was starting to feel very close. We'll find another way, Cooper promised before hanging up. Sarah saw my expression. They're not coming, are they? I shook my head. Not in time. Frank stood up suddenly. Then we need more people. Local people. This isn't their fight, I protested. When armed men take over our town and threaten our neighbors, it becomes our fight, Frank insisted. I know at least 5 men who would stand with us. I looked at him, an old man with weathered hands and determined eyes. This isn't like standing up to bullies, Frank. These are professional killers. And what are you? He challenged. The question hung in the air between us. What was I? A farmer with a past? Or something else I'd been denying for 15 years? My phone buzzed again. Tanner, need to meet. Urgent. Back road behind your place. 20 minutes. I have to go, I said, showing them the message. Sarah, if Cooper calls again, tell him the situation. Frank, if you're serious about getting help, they need to understand what they're walking into. Frank nodded grimly. We may be country folks, but we're not fools. I checked Sarah's rifle, loaded it, and slung it over my shoulder. My old combat knife went into my boot. Not much, but better than nothing. Be careful, Sarah said as I headed for the door. Tanner could be setting you up. I know, I acknowledged. But he's also my only source of inside information. I have to risk it. The night was clear and cool as I made my way through the trees behind my property. The smoldering remains of my barn cast an orange glow over the farm. Everything I'd built, going up in flames. But structures could be rebuilt. Lives couldn't be replaced. I reached the back road and waited, hidden among the trees. Headlights approached slowly, then stopped. A car door opened and closed. One person moving cautiously. Sergeant. Tanner's voice called softly. I stepped out, keeping the rifle ready but not aimed. Here. Tanner's face was pale in the moonlight, his eyes darting nervously. They know you're onto them. Someone talked to Ryder. Told him you know about the meeting. Matthews, I muttered. The colonel was playing all sides. They've changed the plan, Tanner continued. Ryan's still coming, but they're going to hit your friend's place first. The flower lady. They think you'll be there. My blood ran cold. When? Now. They left 10 minutes ago. 3 trucks, 8 men. I was already running back toward my farm. Sarah was there, alone with Frank. Easy targets. Wait. Tanner called after me. There's more. But I couldn't wait. Every second counted now. I sprinted through the woods, branches slapping at my face. My lungs burned. Not as young as they once were, but fear drove me forward. As I broke through the tree line, I saw lights on in my house. Sarah would be there, waiting for me, and Ryder's men were on their way. I burst through the back door, startling Sarah, who was on a satellite phone. They're coming here, I gasped, trying to catch my breath. Ryder's men. Now. Understanding immediately, she spoke into the phone. Change of plans. We're under attack at Jake's farm. She hung up and turned to me. Cooper says they're trying to find ground transportation. Still hours away. Where's Frank? I asked, looking around. Left to gather his friends. Said he'd meet us at Miller's barn before midnight. I checked the windows, seeing nothing yet. We need to leave. Now. Sarah moved, with military efficiency, gathering essential supplies. My truck or through the woods? Woods, I decided. They'll watch the roads. We were just heading for the back door when headlights swept across the front windows. Engines rumbled in my driveway. Too late, I muttered, moving to peek through the curtains. 3 pickup trucks, men jumping out carrying weapons. I counted 8, just as Tanner had said. Upstairs, I directed Sarah. Better defensive position. She nodded, grabbing the bag of supplies and heading for the stairs. I followed, turning off lights as we went. From my bedroom window, we had a view of the front yard. Ryder stood by his truck, directing his men with hand signals. 2 headed for the back door, the rest spread out around the house. They're surrounding us, Sarah whispered. I handed her the hunting rifle. You know how to use this? She gave me a look that answered my question. Cover the front, I instructed. I'll handle the back. I moved to the hallway, where a window overlooked the rear of the house. The 2 men were approaching cautiously, checking corners. They hadn't spotted the root cellar where their companions were locked up. My mind raced through options. The house wasn't defensible for long. We were outnumbered and outgunned. We needed an exit strategy. The sound of breaking glass came from downstairs. They were forcing entry. Time was running out. I rejoined Sarah at the bedroom window. Ryder was still outside, watching the house. If we could take him out, it might disrupt the others. Can you hit him from here? I asked Sarah. She sighted down the rifle. Yes, but it won't stop the others. It'll confuse them. Give us a chance to break out the back. She nodded, taking aim. But before she could fire, something unexpected happened. A truck came barreling down the road toward my farm, horn blaring. Behind it, 2 more vehicles. Frank, Sarah breathed. It was indeed Frank, but not alone. His truck skidded to a stop at the end of my driveway, and 5 men jumped out, carrying shotguns and hunting rifles. The other vehicles disgorged more armed townspeople. Ryder and his men turned in surprise. They'd expected an easy target, not reinforcements. Wilson, Ryder shouted toward the house. Come out now, or we burn it down with you inside. I looked at Sarah. Stay here. Cover me. What are you doing? She hissed. Buying time, I replied, moving to the hallway. From the top of the stairs, I called down. Let these people go, Ryder. Your quarrel is with me. I heard movement below, boots on hardwood. No more games. Ryder's voice came from the bottom of the stairs. Ryan wants you alive, but he didn't say undamaged. Come down now. Tell me something first. I stalled. How much is he paying you to help avenge his father? A pause. What are you talking about? Hassan al-Mahdi, I said. Ryan's father. The man my team captured 15 years ago. Another pause, longer this time. I don't know any Ryan. Or his father. Henderson hired us. Henderson, I repeated, confused. James Henderson. Runs security for Blackwater Industries. Contracted us to secure distribution routes through rural counties. Said you were DEA, undercover. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Matthews had lied to me. This wasn't about Blackfish or Ryan al-Mahdi. This was something else entirely. Outside, I heard shouting as Frank's group confronted Ryder's men in the front yard. A distraction, but not for long. I heard footsteps on the stairs. They were coming up. No more time for talk. Sarah, I called urgently. The window in the guest room. Fire escape. She appeared in the hallway, eyes wide but focused. What about you? I'll hold them here. Buy you time. Not happening, she said firmly, grabbing my arm. Together or not at all. Before I could argue, the first of Ryder's men appeared at the top of the stairs. I tackled him, driving him back into the man behind him. They tumbled down in a tangle of limbs. Go, I shouted to Sarah. Instead, she raised a rifle and fired a shot over the stairwell, not to hit but to scatter the men below. It worked, buying us precious seconds. Together we ran for the guest room. I yanked open the window and helped Sarah onto the fire escape. As she climbed down, I heard men regrouping in the hallway. I was halfway out the window when the door burst open. One of Ryder's men charged in, gun raised. I threw myself the rest of the way out, bullets splintering the window frame above me. On the ground, Sarah waited, covering me as I descended. Once down, we ran for the cover of trees behind the house. Shots rang out from the front yard. Frank's group exchanging fire with Ryder's men. A full-blown firefight was erupting on my quiet farm. We need to get to Miller's barn, I told Sarah as we reached the trees. If what Ryder said is true, this isn't what I thought. Someone else is pulling the strings. Henderson, Sarah repeated. Blackwater Industries. Why'd I know that name? They're a big defense contractor, I explained as we moved through the woods. Private military. But what would they want with rural drug routes? Maybe it's not about drugs, Sarah suggested, keeping pace with me despite the rough terrain. My phone vibrated. A text from Tanner. Did you get out? Meet at the drainage ditch behind Miller's barn. I showed Sarah. Can we trust him? Do we have a choice? She countered. We changed direction, cutting through the forest toward Miller's property. The sound of gunfire faded behind us, but my worry for Frank and the others grew with each step. Your friends from town don't stand a chance against professional mercenaries, I said grimly. You'd be surprised, Sarah replied. Half of them are veterans, and the others have been hunting these woods their whole lives. The revelation caught me off guard. Frank organized a militia? In the hour he was gone? Sarah's smile was tight. Small towns. Everyone knows everyone, and everyone watches out for their own. As we approached Miller's land, we moved more cautiously. The barn was lit up, vehicles parked outside. Guards patrolled the perimeter. Security's tight, I whispered as we crouched in the underbrush. Whatever's happening in there is big. There, Sarah pointed to our right. The drainage ditch Frank had mentioned, running along the southern edge of the property. And crouched beside it, barely visible in the shadows, was Tanner. We worked our way over to him, staying low and using the terrain for cover. Sergeant, Tanner greeted me with obvious relief. You made it. What's happening? I demanded. Ryder said he works for someone named Henderson from Blackwater Industries. Tanner nodded. Henderson arrived an hour ago, but he's not alone. He swallowed hard. Your old colonel is with him. Matthews. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Matthews is working with Blackwater? Not just working with them, Tanner said. He's running the operation. I heard them talking. This isn't about drugs. It's about something called Project Catalyst. Some kind of weapon. Sarah and I exchanged glances. The situation was getting more complicated by the minute. We need to get inside, I decided. See what they're planning. There's a back entrance, Tanner offered. Delivery door for farm equipment. Only one guard. I studied him for a moment. Why are you helping us, Tanner? You're risking everything. His eyes dropped. When you pulled me from that burning transport, you didn't just save my life. You told me something I never forgot. You said, the man you become after this is the one that matters. I haven't been that man lately. Time to change that. The sound of approaching vehicles drew our attention back to the barn. A convoy of black SUVs rolled up the dirt drive. That's him, Tanner whispered. Ryan Almaty. A tall, elegant man in an expensive suit stepped out of the lead vehicle, flanked by bodyguards. Even from this distance, I could see the resemblance to his father. The pieces still didn't fit. Matthews, Henderson, Ryan Almaty, enemies on paper, now working together. What could unite them? Whatever Project Catalyst is, I said quietly, it's big enough to bring together a defense contractor, a rogue military officer, and the son of a terrorist. And they've set up shop in our backyard. Sarah checked the hunting rifle. So what's the plan? I watched as Ryan disappeared into the barn, his bodyguards taking up positions outside. We go in, I decided. Find out what Project Catalyst is. And then we stop it. The determination in Sarah's eyes matched my own. Lead the way, Sergeant. As we prepared to move, distant sirens wailed through the night. The situation on my farm had finally drawn attention. But would help arrive in time? And who exactly would it be helping? So we thought. Matthews handed me a folder. Inside were photos of familiar faces, my old team. 6 men, including myself. 4 of the photos had red X's marked through them. Johnson was found 3 months ago. Fishing cabin in Montana. Made it look like an accident. Martinez was next, then Delaney last month. We almost got to Richards in time. Matthews' voice was flat, emotionless, just like during mission briefs in another lifetime. And now me. I said, the reality's sinking in. You're the last one, Wilson. He met my eyes. Besides me. I flipped through the photos. My friends. My brothers. All dead because of a mission we were told never happened. Who's doing this? I asked. Remember our target? Hassan al-Mahdi. I nodded. The mission was supposed to capture a high-value terrorist leader. Intelligence said he was planning attacks on American soil. We went in quiet, no official sanction. He had a son, Ryan. He was 16 when we hit that compound. The memory flashed through my mind. A teenager watching his father being taken. The fear in his eyes. We left him alive. A mercy, we thought. He's all grown up now, Matthews continued. Rich too. His father had connections with some very wealthy people. Ryan has spent years tracking down everyone involved in his father's capture. For revenge, I said quietly. These men working for him, Ryder and the others, they're just hired muscle. They probably don't even know who they're really working for. They think it's about drugs. The car slowed, turning onto a dirt road I didn't recognize. Where are we going? I asked. Somewhere safe. You need to disappear tonight. Wilson. My team can get you out. New identity, new location. I thought of Sarah, of her greenhouse, and my farm. The life I'd built here. What about the people in town? What about Sarah? Not our concern, Matthews said coldly. Operation Blackfish was never official. If this gets out, it implicates people all the way up the chain. Very important people. I stared at him. People are going to get hurt. Casualties of war, he replied, not meeting my eyes. The car stopped at an abandoned gas station miles from town. Another vehicle waited there, a black SUV with tinted windows. My extraction team, Matthews explained. They'll take you to a safe house. I didn't move. You just want to let Ryan and his men terrorize an entire town? What about the sheriff? Can't you get real law enforcement involved? Matthews shook his head. Too many questions. This needs to stay quiet. Something didn't feel right. The Matthews I knew would never abandon civilians. He was ruthless, yes, but never careless with innocent lives. You're scared, I realized suddenly. This isn't about protecting me or keeping Blackfish secret. You're running too. His face hardened. You don't understand the forces at play here, Wilson. I understand enough, I said, my hand moving to the door handle. I'm not running. Don't be stupid, Matthews snapped. These aren't just thugs. They're professionals. Ryan has hired ex-military, ex-intelligence. They will kill you and anyone who gets in their way. Then help me stop them. I countered. You meet your extraction team. We can end this tonight. Matthews looked away. My orders are to extract you. Nothing else. Orders from who? I pressed. When he didn't answer, I knew. You're not here officially either, are you? Nobody sent you. His silence confirmed it. You're using me as bait. I said, the truth dawning on me. You want them to find me, so you can get to Ryan. Matthews finally met my eyes. It's bigger than you, Wilson. Ryan isn't just seeking revenge. He's continuing his father's work. Planning something big. We need to find him. We? I asked. Or just you? Are you even still with the government? His expression told me everything. He'd gone private. Mercenary. I opened the car door. I'm going back to town. You'll die, Matthews said flatly. Maybe, I acknowledged. But I won't let innocent people pay for our mistakes. Matthews sighed. I always said you were the best of us, Wilson. Too bad it'll get you killed. He nodded to the driver. Let him go. I stepped out onto the gravel lot. What happened to you, Colonel? 15 years of looking over my shoulder, he replied. It changes a man. As I started walking back toward town, Matthews called after me. Midnight, Miller Barn. That's when it's going down. Ryan will be there. I didn't look back. The road stretched dark ahead of me, miles from town with no phone and no weapon. But my mind was already working, planning. If Ryan wanted me, he'd get me, but on my terms. After walking about a mile, headlights appeared behind me. I tensed, ready to dive into the ditch, but the truck slowed and I recognized Sarah's old blue pickup. She leaned out the window. Need a ride, soldier? How did you find me? I asked, climbing in. Frank saw you get into a car with some stranger. We didn't like the look of it, so we followed. She glanced at me. Good thing we did. I asked. Frank's voice came from the back seat. Town's being taken over by criminals. Can't just stand by. Sarah drove with determination. Jake, everyone's talking. These men have been threatening all the vendors for the market. The Miller farm is just the first. They're planning something big. I know, I said, and it's my fault they're here. I explained about Operation Blackfish, about Ryan Almaty seeking revenge, leaving out the classified details. They listened without interrupting. So, this isn't about drugs? Sarah asked finally. The drugs are just cover, I explained. Tonight at the Miller barn, Ryan himself is coming. After that, they'll have no more use for this town. Or its people, Frank added grimly. We drove in silence for a moment. I need to get to my farm, I said finally. There are things there I need. Jake, Sarah said quietly, you're not planning to fight these people alone, are you? The concern in her voice touched something I'd kept locked away for years. Not alone, I said. I have an inside man, and maybe a few others I can call. As we approached my farm, I saw something that made my blood run cold. Smoke rising against the night sky, and bright orange flames licking up the side of my barn. They're sending a message, I said tightly. Sarah's hand found mine. I'm sorry, Jake. I watched my barn burn, feeling a cold resolve settle over me. They think this will scare me off. Make me run. Will it? Frank asked from the back seat. I shook my head slowly. No, it just means I don't have to worry about keeping my farm intact anymore. Sarah looked at me, understanding dawning in her eyes. What are you planning, Jake? Something they won't expect. I replied, watching the flames climb higher. A farmer who fights back. We parked behind the house, away from the burning barn. Through the trees, I could see two men watching the fire, making sure it spread. Stay here, I told Sarah and Frank, slipping out of the truck. Moving through familiar ground, I circled behind the men. They were so focused on the fire, they never heard me approach. One held a gas can, laughing as my years of work went up in flames. I hadn't fought hand-to-hand in 15 years, but some skills never leave you. The first man went down without a sound, a precise strike to the base of his skull. The second turned just in time to see me before joining his friend in unconsciousness. I dragged them away from the barn, binding them with their own belts. No point trying to save the structure now. It was already half gone. Inside the house, I went straight to my bedroom and pulled the trunk from under the bed again. This time, I opened it without hesitation. Beneath my uniform lay what I needed, a satellite phone that still worked after all these years. I dialed a number I'd memorized, but never thought I'd use. After 3 rings, a gruff voice answered. Identity code, Sierra Whiskey 39 Alpha, I replied. A pause. Then, Wilson, Jesus, man, we thought you were dead. Not yet, Coop, I said, recognizing the voice of my former spotter. But I will be soon without help. How fast can you get to me? Depend where you are. I gave him my location. I've got about 4 hours before everything goes sideways. What's the situation? Cooper asked. All business now. Blackfish is back. They found us all. I'm the last one besides Matthews. Cooper swore softly. Martinez? Richards? Gone, I confirmed. And the man responsible is coming here tonight. Ryan Almaty, Cooper said. Not a question. You knew? I asked, surprised. We've been tracking him, Cooper replied. Lost him 3 days ago. Should have guessed he was heading your way. I heard movement in the background, Cooper barking orders. We could be there in 3 hours, he said finally. Try not to die before then. No promises, I replied, feeling something like hope for the first time that day. After hanging up, I pulled out the rest of my old equipment, tactical vest, combat knife, field glasses. No firearms, those I'd surrendered upon discharge. But I'd make do. Sarah appeared in the doorway, eyes wide at the sight of my military gear spread across the bed. Those men outside are tied up, I told her. They'll be unconscious for a while, but we should move them somewhere secure. She nodded, then held out something wrapped in cloth. I think you might need this. I unwrapped it to find a hunting rifle, old but well-maintained. It was my father's, she explained. I kept it after he passed. Our eyes met, and I saw something there I hadn't noticed before. Strength, determination, and something more. You never told me how Flower Farmer got so brave, I said quietly. A small smile touched her lips. Maybe someday I'll tell you about my time in the army. If we survive tonight. Act 5. I laid out my combat medals one by one on the truck's tailgate. The morning sun caught the brass and made it shine. My fingers traced the Purple Heart, remembering the day I earned it. The photo of my recon unit stared back at me, faces forever young and brave. I heard their heavy boots before I saw them. Ryder and his gang rounded the corner, cocky grins fading when they spotted what I'd arranged. 3rd Battalion, Scout Sniper, 2 tours, I said, my voice calm and low. I didn't raise it. I didn't need to. I'm not looking for trouble, but I need you to understand who you're threatening. Ryder's eyes darted from the medals to my face, then to his gang. For just a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes, doubt, maybe even fear, before his face hardened again. War's over, soldier boy, he spat, but his voice had lost some of its edge. Out here, we're the law. As they turned to leave, one of them hung back. Young guy, nervous looking, with eyes that seemed to carry more weight than his years should allow. Something about him seemed familiar, like a face from a dream you can't quite place. He glanced at my medals, then quickly looked away when our eyes met. I watched them swagger across the market, but my mind was spinning. Where had I seen those eyes before? The rest of the market day crawled by. Vendors kept their heads down, handing over cash when Ryder's gang passed through. Sarah tried to catch my eye from her flower stall, her face painted with worry. I gave her a small nod, trying to look more confident than I felt. By afternoon, dark clouds rolled in, matching the mood. The first fat raindrops sent people scurrying for cover. I was packing up when Sheriff Mills stopped by, tipping his hat. Heard there was some trouble, he said, leaning against my truck. Nothing I can't handle, I replied, securing a tarp over my produce. These boys aren't just regular troublemakers, Jake, he said, voice dropping. Ryder's connected to some bad people across the state line. Been trying to build a case for months. Then do your job, I said, harder than I meant to. Mills sighed. It's not that simple. People are scared. Nobody talks. He handed me a card. Call me before you do anything stupid. I pocketed the card without a word. The sheriff walked away, boots splashing in forming puddles. Thunder cracked overhead as I finished loading the truck. The market had cleared out, vendors rushing home before the storm hit full force. Only Sarah remained, struggling with her heavy buckets of flowers. I crossed over to help her. Let me get those. Thanks, Jake. Her smile was warm despite the chill in the air. Someday, huh? You could say that. I lifted the buckets into her van. You should be more careful. Those guys. I saw what happened, she cut in. What you showed them. Is it true? You were a Marine. I nodded, suddenly uncomfortable. I'd spent years building a quiet life here, leaving the past buried where it belonged. You never mentioned it, she said softly. Not something I talk about. Rain pounded harder on the metal roof of the market. Sarah touched my arm gently. You don't have to face them alone, you know. The whole market's behind you. That's what I'm afraid of, I said. People could get hurt. A crash of thunder made us both jump. Through the curtain of rain, I caught a glimpse of a motorcycle parked across the street, its rider watching us. When lightning flashed again, he was gone. Back at my farm, I checked the perimeter like I used to check our camp in Helmand Province. Old habits. The storm had grown into a wild thing, wind whipping trees into a frenzy. My farmhouse creaked and moaned against the assault. In my bedroom, I pulled out the lockbox from under my bed. The combination came to my fingers automatically, my son's birthday. Inside, beyond the medals and papers, lay my K-bar knife, still in its sheath. I hadn't touched it in years. My phone rang, startling me. Jake. Sarah's voice trembled through the speaker. Someone's outside my house. I can see shadows moving past my windows. Lock your doors. Stay away from windows. I'm on my way, I said, already grabbing my jacket. No, wait. The line went dead. I tried calling back. Nothing. The storm must have knocked out the cell towers. Or something worse. I grabbed the K-bar, sliding it into my boot like I'd done 1,000 times before. As I headed for the door, headlights swept across my front window. A vehicle was coming up my long driveway. I killed the lights and moved to the side of the window. An old pickup truck came to a stop. Through the rain-streaked glass, I could make out a single figure sitting inside, engine running. Minutes passed. The driver didn't move. I was weighing my options when the truck's lights flashed 3 times in quick succession. That pattern. We used it in Afghanistan when approaching friendly positions. Cautiously, I stepped onto the porch, rain immediately soaking through my shirt. The truck's door opened, and a young man from Ryder's gang stepped out, hands raised to show he was unarmed. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead. "Sergeant Wilson," he called over the storm. "You probably don't remember me." I squinted through the rain, that nagging familiarity tugging harder. Then it hit me, not the face of a man, but a boy. A terrified boy I'd dragged from burning metal in a foreign desert. "Private Tanner?" I asked, disbelief making my voice crack. He nodded, rain streaming down his face like tears. "What are you doing with them?" I demanded. "It's complicated," he said, stepping closer. "But I needed to warn you. Ryder saw those medals today. He's not backing down. He's coming for you tonight. And he knows about the flower lady too." The world seemed to stop for a moment, even as the storm raged around us. Sarah's call suddenly made horrible sense. "When?" I asked. "Now," Tanner said, checking his watch. "They're coming now." Lightning split the sky, illuminating both our faces. In that flash, I saw the broken boy I'd saved years ago, and he saw whatever I'd become in the years since. In that moment, we both knew exactly what was coming, and I knew I couldn't run from who I was anymore. I laid out my combat medals one by one on the truck's tailgate. The morning sun caught the brass and made it shine. My fingers traced the Purple Heart, remembering the day I earned it. The photo of my recon unit stared back at me, faces forever young and brave. I heard their heavy boots before I saw them. Ryder and his gang rounded the corner, cocky grins fading when they spotted what I'd arranged. "3rd Battalion, Scout Sniper, 2 tours," I said, my voice calm and low. I didn't raise it. I didn't need to. "I'm not looking for trouble, but I need you to understand who you're threatening." Ryder's eyes darted from the medals to my face, then to his gang. For just a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes, doubt, maybe even fear, before his face hardened again. "War's over, soldier boy," he spat, but his voice had lost some of its edge. "Out here with the law." As they turned to leave, one of them hung back. Young guy, nervous looking, with eyes that seemed to carry more weight than his years should allow. Something about him seemed familiar, like a face from a dream you can't quite place. He glanced at my medals, then quickly looked away when our eyes met. I watched them swagger across the market, but my mind was spinning. Where had I seen those eyes before? The rest of the market day crawled by. Vendors kept their heads down, handing over cash when Ryder's gang passed through. Sarah tried to catch my eye from her flower stall, her face painted with worry. I gave her a small nod, trying to look more confident than I felt. By afternoon, dark clouds rolled in, matching the mood. The first fat raindrops sent people scurrying for cover. I was packing up when Sheriff Mills stopped by, tipping his hat. "Heard there was some trouble," he said, leaning against my truck. "Nothing I can't handle," I replied, securing a tarp over my produce. "These boys aren't just regular troublemakers, Jake," he said, voice dropping. "Ryder's connected to some bad people across the state line. Been trying to build a case for months." "Then do your job," I said, harder than I meant to. Mills sighed. "It's not that simple. People are scared. Nobody talks." He handed me a card. "Call me before you do anything stupid." I pocketed the card without a word. The sheriff walked away, boots splashing and forming puddles. Thunder cracked overhead as I finished loading the truck. The market had cleared out, vendors rushing home before the storm hit full force. Only Sarah remained, struggling with her heavy buckets of flowers. I crossed over to help her. "Let me get those." "Thanks, Jake." Her smile was warm despite the chill in the air. "Someday, huh?" "You could say that." I lifted the buckets into her van. "You should be more careful. Those guys." "I saw what happened," she cut in. "What you showed them. Is it true? You were a Marine?" I nodded, suddenly uncomfortable. I'd spent years building a quiet life here, leaving the past buried where it belonged. "You never mentioned it," she said softly. "Not something I talk about." Rain pounded harder on the metal roof of the market. Sarah touched my arm gently. "You don't have to face them alone, you know. The whole market's behind you." "That's what I'm afraid of," I said. "People could get hurt." A crash of thunder made us both jump. Through the curtain of rain, I caught a glimpse of a motorcycle parked across the street, its rider watching us. When lightning flashed again, he was gone. Back at my farm, I checked the perimeter like I used to check our camp in Helmand Province. Old habits. The storm had grown into a wild thing, wind whipping trees into a frenzy. My farmhouse creaked and moaned against the assault. In my bedroom, I pulled out the lockbox from under my bed. The combination came to my fingers automatically. My son's birthday. Inside, beyond the metals and papers, lay my K-bar knife, still in its sheath. I hadn't touched it in years. My phone rang, startling me. "Jake." Sarah's voice trembled through the speaker. "Someone's outside my house. I can see shadows moving past my windows. Lock your doors. Stay away from windows. I'm on my way," I said, already grabbing my jacket. "No, wait." The line went dead. I tried calling back. Nothing. The storm must have knocked out the cell towers. Or something worse. I grabbed the K-bar, sliding it into my boot like I'd done 1,000 times before. As I headed for the door, headlights swept across my front window. A vehicle was coming up my long driveway. I killed the lights and moved to the side of the window. An old pickup truck came to a stop. Through the rain-streaked glass, I could make out a single figure sitting inside, engine running. Minutes passed. The driver didn't move. I was weighing my options when the truck's lights flashed 3 times in quick succession. That pattern. We used it in Afghanistan when approaching friendly positions. Cautiously, I stepped onto the porch, rain immediately soaking through my shirt. The truck's door opened, and a young man from Ryder's gang stepped out, hands raised to show he was unarmed. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead. "Sergeant Wilson," he called over the storm. "You probably don't remember me." I squinted through the rain, that nagging familiarity tugging harder. Then it hit me, not the face of a man but a boy. A terrified boy I'd dragged from burning metal in a foreign desert. "Private Tanner?" I asked, disbelief making my voice crack. He nodded, rain streaming down his face like tears. "What are you doing with them?" I demanded. "It's complicated," he said, stepping closer. "But I needed to warn you. Ryder saw those medals today. He's not backing down. He's coming for you tonight. And he knows about the Flower Lady too." The world seemed to stop for a moment, even as the storm raged around us. Sarah's call suddenly made horrible sense. "When?" I asked. "Now," Tanner said, checking his watch. "They're coming now." Lightning split the sky, illuminating both our faces. In that flash, I saw the broken boy I'd saved years ago, and he saw whatever I'd become in the years since. In that moment, we both knew exactly what was coming, and I knew I couldn't run from who I was anymore. "You saved my life," Tanner said, his voice barely audible over the storm. Rain dripped from his nose as he stood, shivering on my porch. "That transport, the ID, I was trapped. You pulled me out when the others ran." The memory flashed in my mind. The smoking wreckage, screams mixing with radio chatter, the skinny private pinned beneath twisted metal. I'd forgotten his name until now, but never his eyes. They held the same fear tonight as they did that day. "Why are you with them?" I asked, ushering him inside out of the downpour. Tanner wiped his face with a sleeve. "Got back stateside, no skills, no money. My uncle knew Ryder. He looked at his boots, leaving puddles on my floor. Started as just riding with them. Then, things changed. Ryder got connected with bigger criminals. Started with protection money. Then, a crash of thunder cut him off. The lights flickered once, twice, then died. In the sudden darkness, we stood like ghosts from each other's past. Ryder's got Sarah," Tanner blurted. "He took her an hour ago. Said it would teach you respect." My blood turned to ice. "Where?" "Your barn." Said it was poetic. I didn't wait to hear more. I grabbed my truck keys and an old flashlight from the kitchen drawer. As I headed for the door, Tanner caught my arm. "You can't just walk in there. He's got 4 guys with him. 5, counting you," I said coldly. Tanner's face fell. "I'm not with them on this. That's why I'm here." I studied his face in the beam of my flashlight. The boy I'd saved had grown into a man making bad choices, but his eyes still couldn't lie. "Then help me," I said. The rain had turned the dirt road to mud, making the truck slide as we raced toward the barn at the far end of my property. I cut the headlights a quarter mile out. No sense announcing our arrival. "They've got guns," Tanner whispered as we crept through my apple orchard. "Ryder's been drinking. He's mean when he drinks." Through the trees, I could see the dim glow of flashlights moving inside my barn. The large structure stood silhouetted against the stormy sky, weathered wood darker than the night around it. "Tell me exactly who's in there," I said, my voice slipping into the command tone I hadn't used in years. Tanner nodded, falling into the familiar pattern of a mission brief. "Ryder, of course. Deke, he's the tall one with the tattoo on his neck. Vince and Mac, they're brothers. Mean, but not too bright." He swallowed hard. "And Sarah. Weapons. Ryder carries a hunting knife. Deke has a pistol, keeps it tucked in his back waistband. The brothers have switchblades." I nodded, processing the information like I used to before missions. "Why tonight? Why Sarah?" Tanner looked away. "Ryder's been watching. He thinks you two are close. Says taking what someone loves is better than taking their money." The rain had lessened to a drizzle, but lightning still flashed overhead, briefly illuminating the farm in stark black and white. I reached down and felt the knife in my boot. 20 years melted away in an instant. "Stay here," I told him. "No," Tanner said firmly. "I owe you. I'm coming." We approached from downwind, using the shadows like old friends. The barn door was slightly ajar, voices drifting out into the night. Should have seen his face when he saw those stupid medals. Ryder's unmistakable voice laughed. "War hero turned farmer. Pathetic." He didn't look scared, another voice countered. "He will be," Ryder replied. "Will he find his girlfriend strung up in his precious barn?" A woman's voice, Sarah's, cut through the dark. "He's not what you think. You made a terrible mistake." The sound of a slap echoed, followed by silence. Something ancient and dark surged through my veins. I touched Tanner's shoulder, pointing to the back entrance. He nodded, understanding my silent command. "Split up. Flank them." As I crept around the side of the barn, my foot found a fallen branch. The crack sounded like a gunshot in the quiet night. "What was that?" someone inside demanded. "Probably just the storm," Ryder replied, but I could hear the tension in his voice. "Deke, check it out." I pressed myself against the wooden wall, controlling my breathing. Heavy boots splashed through puddles, coming closer. A beam of light swept past, probing the darkness. The tall figure of Deke emerged, pistol now in hand. He moved with the caution of someone who'd grown up looking over his shoulder. But he wasn't trained like I was. I waited until he'd passed, then moved silently behind him. My arm locked around his throat in a sleeper hold before he could make sound. The gun clattered softly into the mud as he struggled briefly, then went limp. I lowered him gently, taking his weapon, checking the magazine. 3 rounds. Better than nothing. At the back of the barn, I could see Tanner slipping inside through the small door we use for feeding livestock. I counted to 30, giving him time to get into position. Through a crack in the wood, I could see Sarah tied to one of the support posts. Her left eye was swollen, a trickle of blood at the corner of her mouth. Rage bubbled up, threatening to overwhelm my careful planning. "Deke's taking his sweet time," one of the brothers said nervously. Ryder paced in front of Sarah, flipping his knife from hand to hand. Maybe our hero farmer showed up early for the party. I needed distraction. Looking around, I spotted my old tractor parked nearby. Perfect. One hard push set it rolling down the slight incline toward the barn. As it picked up speed, I rushed to the front entrance, staying low. The crash as it hit the barn wall was tremendous. Everyone inside shouted in surprise. In that moment of chaos, I slipped through the door. Vince was closest, turning toward the sound of the crash. He never saw my attack. A quick strike to his solar plexus doubled him over, and a knee to the face put him down. Max saw me and lunged with his blade. I sidestepped, caught his wrist, and used his momentum to slam him face first into the wooden post. He crumpled beside his brother. Ryder spun around, eyes wild in the dimness. "I knew you'd come," he snarled, knife glinting as lightning flashed through the high windows. "Let her go," I said calmly, standing in the center of the barn. Ryder smirked, moving behind Sarah. He pressed his blade against her throat. "I don't think so, hero. Not how this works." Sarah's eyes found mine, filled not with fear, but with fierce determination. She gave me the slightest nod. "Last chance," I offered, watching Tanner move silently into position behind him. "You don't give chances in my world," Ryder laughed. "You take what you want." "That's where you're wrong," I said, taking a step forward. In one fluid motion, Sarah threw her head back, connecting with Ryder's nose. He cursed, stumbling backward. Tanner rushed forward, tackling him to the ground. The knife skittered across the floor. I was there in 3 strides, boot on Ryder's chest. He looked up at me, with hatred and blood streaming from his nose. "Do it," he spat. "Show us the killer you really are." My fingers tightened around Deke's pistol. It would be so easy. One squeeze, and the nightmare would end. Justice, some would call it. But as I stood there, I saw my reflection in Ryder's hate-filled eyes. Not a farmer, not even a Marine, but something I'd promised never to become again. I lowered the gun. "You're not worth it." Tanner found rope in the corner and soon had Ryder securely tied. I cut Sarah free, gently touching her bruised face. "I'm sorry," I whispered. She shook her head. "Not your fault." As if responding to the moment, the power flickered back on, bathing the barn in harsh light. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. "Sheriff's coming," Tanner said, looking nervous. What about me? I studied the young man who'd once been a frightened private, then a lost veteran, then an outlaw, and now something else. Something with a chance. "You came to warn me," I said. "That counts for something." Sarah touched my arm. "Jake, your barn." I turned to see what she was pointing at. In the corner, barely visible, a small orange glow had started among the hay bales. While we'd been fighting, one of the lanterns must have tipped over. "Fire!" Tanner yelled as the flames suddenly leaped higher, racing up the dry wooden wall. Smoke billowed through the barn as we rushed to untie Ryder and drag the unconscious brothers toward the exit. The old wood, dry from years under the sun, caught like paper. We stumbled outside, coughing and gasping. The sheriff's car pulled up, lights flashing blue and red against the growing inferno. As we watched my barn burn against the night sky, Sarah's hand found mine. "Now what?" she asked softly. I looked at Tanner, then at the sheriff handcuffing Ryder and his crew, then back at the flames consuming a piece of my farm, and, with it, the last of my hiding places. "Now we rebuild," I said, knowing I meant more than just the bong. The fire roared higher, sending sparks into the night sky like angry fireflies. I could feel its heat on my face as I watched Sheriff Mills handcuff Ryder and the brothers. The barn I'd built with my own hands was now a tower of flames against the dark sky. But something wasn't right. "Where's Sarah?" I suddenly asked, scanning the faces lit by the fire's glow. Tanner looked around wildly. "She was right behind us." My heart stopped. In the chaos of dragging Ryder and his men out, we'd lost track of her. A scream pierced the night, barely audible over the crackling flames. "She's still inside," I shouted, already running back toward the burning building. Sheriff Mills grabbed for my arm. "Jake, you can't go in there. The structure's not safe." I yanked free of his grip. "Call the fire department." I yelled over my shoulder, not slowing down. The barn entrance was now a wall of fire, hungry flames licking up the sides and across the old wooden beams overhead. Smoke billowed out in thick black clouds. I pulled my shirt over my mouth and dropped to my knees, crawling beneath the worst of the smoke. "Sarah," I called, my voice raspy. "Sarah, where are you?" The heat was incredible, like being inside an oven. Sweat poured down my face, immediately evaporating in the intense heat. My eyes stung and watered as I squinted through the smoke. A weak cough answered from the back corner. I crawled toward it, navigating around fallen beams and burning hay bales. Through the smoke, I could make out Sarah's form, pinned beneath a fallen support beam. "Jake," she coughed, reaching out a hand toward me. "I'm here," I said, reaching her side. "I'm going to get you out." The beam across her legs was heavy, but not impossible. As I braced my shoulders under it, footsteps pounded behind me. Tanner appeared through the smoke, his face blackened, eyes wide with fear. "Thought you could use backup, Sergeant," he coughed. Together we lifted the beam, just enough for Sarah to drag herself free. Her pants were torn, blood seeping through from what looked like a bad gash on her calf. She wouldn't be walking out. "We need to move fast," I said, checking the ceiling. The fire had eaten through most of the support structure. It wouldn't hold much longer. I scooped Sarah into my arms. "Stay low, follow me," I told Tanner, We started back toward the entrance, but a terrible cracking sound froze us in place. I looked up just as a massive ceiling beam gave way, crashing down and blocking our exit path with a wall of flames. "We're trapped," Sarah whispered, burying her face against my shoulder. My Marine training kicked in. Never give up, never surrender. "There's always a way out," I said firmly, looking around. "The back door." We turned toward the smaller exit we used for moving equipment. The path was clearer, but I could see the flames had already reached the door itself. "We'll have to run for it," I told Tanner, who nodded grimly. Sarah tightened her grip around my neck. "I trust you," she said. We moved as fast as we could through the burning maze. The smoke was getting thicker by the second, making each breath a struggle. My lungs burned, my eyes streamed tears. Halfway to the door, Tanner stumbled, disappearing into the smoke. "Tanner," I called, stopping. "Keep going," his voice came back, followed by harsh coughing. "I'm right behind you." There was no time to argue. The entire structure groaned around us, threatening to collapse any second. I pushed forward, Sarah growing heavier in my arms as my strength began to fade. Just when I thought we wouldn't make it, the back door appeared through the smoke, a rectangle of night sky visible through the flames that licked around its frame. "We have to go through it," I told Sarah. "Close your eyes, hold your breath." I summoned the last of my strength and charged forward. The flames bit at my clothes, my skin, my hair as we burst through the doorway. The cool night air hit us like a wave as we tumbled onto the wet grass outside. Rolling to put out any flames, I set Sarah down gently and turned back to the door. "Tanner," I shouted. No answer came from the inferno. Sheriff Mills appeared at my side, pulling me back as I tried to go back in. "You can't save everyone, Jake," he said, restraining me. Just then, a crash came from the side of the barn as a window exploded outward. Through it tumbled Tanner, clothes smoking, gasping for air. I broke free of the sheriff's grip and ran to him, helping him away from the building just as, with a deafening roar, the entire structure collapsed in on itself. Fire truck sirens wailed in the distance as we watched the last of my barn consumed by flames. Paramedics arrived, immediately tending to Sarah's leg and Tanner's burns. Sheriff Mills stood nearby, talking into his radio, while his deputy watched over Ryder and his gang in the patrol car. As a paramedic wrapped a blanket around my shoulders and pressed an oxygen mask to my face, I couldn't take my eyes off Tanner. The reluctant outlaw, the forgotten private, had just risked his life to help save Sarah. "Why?" I asked him when they finally let me remove the mask. "Why did you come back in?" Tanner looked at me, his young face solemn beyond his years. "You came back for me once," he said simply, "when everyone else ran." In the flashing lights of the emergency vehicles, I saw something in his eyes I recognized, the same thing I'd seen in my own when I finally came home from war. A need for purpose, for redemption. Sheriff Mills approached, notepad in hand. "I need statements from all of you," he said, then paused, looking at Tanner. "Including you, son." Tanner's shoulders slumped. "I know. I'm one of them. From what I saw," Mills said carefully, "you helped save 2 lives tonight. That counts for something in my book." Hope flickered across Tanner's face. The paramedics loaded Sarah into the ambulance. "Jake," she called, reaching out for me. I went to her side, taking her hand. "You came back for me," she whispered, tears cutting tracks through the soot on her face. "Always will," I promised. As they prepared to take her to the hospital, I looked back at what remained of my barn. 20 years of building a peaceful life, hiding from who I used to be. Now it was ashes. Sheriff Mills stood beside me. "What now, Marine?" he asked quietly. I watched as another deputy handcuffed Tanner, gentler than he'd been with the others. The young man caught my eye as they led him toward his second patrol car. "Now," I said, straightening my shoulders, "I stop hiding." Dawn was breaking over the mountains when I finally arrived at the hospital, carrying with me papers I'd had the sheriff print out. Sarah was awake, her leg bandaged, but otherwise okay. Her face lit up when I entered. "You look terrible," she smiled. "Feel worse," I admitted, sitting beside her bed. "But I brought something you should see." I handed her the papers, testimonials from every vendor of the market, statements about Ryder's gang, and their threats. Evidence enough to put them away for a long time. Everyone came forward, I explained. Once they knew they weren't alone. "And Tanner?" she asked. I smiled for the first time since the fire. "That's the other thing I need to tell you about." Sunshine bathed the fresh-cut lumber as I hammered another nail into place. The frame of the new barn was taking shape, rising from the ashes of the old one. It had been exactly 1 month since the fire, and every day had brought changes, not just to my farm, but to everything. "Looking good, Sarge," called a voice from below. Tanner stood with his hand, shielding his eyes from the sun, a tool belt slung around his waist. I wiped sweat from my forehead with my sleeve. "Pass me the crossbeam," I called back. All around us, people worked in a steady rhythm. Old Bill Jenkins from the hardware store was measuring boards. The Rodriguez brothers were mixing concrete for the new foundation. Even Sheriff Mills had stopped by earlier, bringing donuts and coffee for everyone. I climbed down the ladder, taking a moment to survey the progress. Where charred remains had stood, a new structure was rising, bigger and stronger than before. Community, it turned out, built better barns than lone farmers. "Didn't expect this many people today," Tanner said, handing me a bottle of water. "Me neither," I admitted. When Judge Harmon had sentenced Tanner to 6 months of community service instead of jail time, I'd volunteered my farm as the place he could serve it. What I hadn't expected was how word would spread, or how many others would show up to help. A blue pickup truck pulled into the driveway, kicking up dust. Sarah stepped out, balancing a large tray of sandwiches with a good arm. Her other arm was still in a cast, but she'd insisted on bringing lunch every day. "The hero returns," called Bill, and a cheer went up from the workers. "They're just sandwiches," Sarah laughed, setting the tray on our makeshift picnic table. "He means you," I said quietly when she reached me. "They've all heard the story now." Sarah blushed. I just did what anyone would do. But we both knew that wasn't true. After the fire, it was Sarah who had refused to press charges against Tanner. Sarah who had spoken to the judge about second chances. Sarah whose flower shop had become a meeting place for market vendors to organize against intimidation. The noon whistle blew from town, and tools were set down as everyone gathered for lunch. It struck me how different this was from my solitary life just weeks ago. Back then, I'd kept to myself, believing that peace meant isolation. Sarah sat beside me on a stack of lumber. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, bumping my shoulder gently with hers. "Just thinking about change," I replied. "All of this, it's not what I expected. Good change or bad?" I looked around at the people who had become more than neighbors. A retired couple who brought homemade pies, teenagers earning summer money, other veterans who'd heard about one of their own in trouble. Then my eyes found Tanner, laughing with the Rodriguez brothers over some joke. Good, I decided. Definitely good. After lunch, work resumed with renewed energy. I was showing Tanner how to properly frame a window when a black SUV pulled into the driveway. The government plates caught my attention immediately. 2 men in crisp suits stepped out, scanning the construction site until their eyes found me. Something in their stance, their alertness despite the casual clothes, marked them immediately. Military or former military. "Jake Wilson," the taller one called. Conversations died around us as I set down my hammer and approached them. "That's me. Colonel Frank Reeves," the man said, extending his hand. "And this is Major Hart. Could we speak privately?" Curious murmurs spread through the workers as I led the men toward the shade of the old oak tree. Sarah caught my eye, her expression questioning. I gave her a small nod to say it was okay. "What's this about?" I asked when we were out of earshot. Colonel Reeves studied me for a moment. "You've been on our radar for some time, Staff Sergeant. Your service record is impressive." I tensed. "That was a long time ago." "Not so long," Major Hart said. "Skills like yours don't just disappear." "What do you want?" I asked directly. The colonel handed me a folder. "We work with a program that helps veterans transition back to civilian life, particularly those who struggle with the adjustment." I opened the folder. Inside were brochures about veteran support services, along with paperwork for a grant program. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity," Colonel Reeves said firmly. "It's an investment. We've been following recent events in your community. How you handled the situation with the criminal gang. how you're rebuilding. There aren't many people who could have done what you did. I looked over at Tanner, who was watching us nervously from the barn frame. I had help. Yes, the colonel nodded. Private Tanner. He's another reason we're here. My protective instincts flared. He served his country once already, and deserves better than what he found when he came home. Major Hart agreed. That's exactly our point. Too many veterans fall through the cracks, end up in gangs, homeless, or worse. Colonel Reeves gestured to the construction site. What you're building here, it's not just a barn. It's a community, a support network. We want to help expand that. Make it official. I frowned, not understanding. What exactly are you proposing? A veteran outreach center, he explained. Right here on your property. The grant would fund construction of a proper facility. A place where veterans could come for support, job training, therapy, whatever they need to successfully transition back to civilian life. I stared at him in disbelief. Why me? Because you've already started it, Major Hart said. Look around. You brought these people together. You gave Tanner a second chance. How many others out there need the same? My mind raced with possibilities. The eastern field, I never had time to farm, could be converted. The old guest house could be renovated for offices. Veterans helping veterans, not through government bureaucracy, but through real community. I'll need to think about it, I said finally. Of course. Colonel Reeves handed me his card. Call when you're ready. No pressure. As they drove away, Sarah and Tanner approached, curiosity evident on their faces. Everything okay? Sarah asked. I tucked the folder under my arm. I think so. I'll explain later. We returned to work, but my mind was elsewhere. For 20 years, I tried to leave the Marine behind, believing peace and war couldn't exist in the same life. Now I was beginning to see that wasn't true. Maybe the skills that had made me a good Marine, leadership, discipline, protecting others, were exactly what was needed here. By sunset, the day's work was done. People packed up tools, making plans to return tomorrow. Sarah coordinated cleanup while I thanked each person individually. The sense of accomplishment was palpable as trucks and cars pulled away, leaving just the three of us. Quite a day, Sarah said, sitting on the porch steps beside me. Tanner joined us, passing around cold drinks from the cooler. I think it's time I told you both about those visitors, I said. I explained the proposal, watching their reactions carefully. A veteran center? Here. Tanner's eyes were wide with surprise. It's just an idea, I said. A big commitment. Sarah took my hand. It's perfect, Jake. All these years you've been hiding who you were. Maybe this is why. What do you mean? Maybe you needed to be both, she said softly. The warrior and the farmer. The protector and the builder. Tanner nodded in agreement. You know how many guys come back and feel lost? No purpose. No community. If I'd had somewhere like this to go. He didn't need to finish. We all knew his story might have been different. The setting sun painted the new barn frame in gold light. Where there had been destruction, something new was growing. Something better. And maybe that was true for me too. I fought so long to forget, I said quietly. To be just a farmer. You're more than just one thing, Sarah said. We all are. Later that night, after Sarah had gone home and Tanner to his room in the guest house, I sat alone on the porch. The folder lay open in my lap, the colonel's card in my hand. Above me, stars filled the clear country sky. Morning would bring another day of building the barn. But now there was something else on the horizon, a chance to build more than just a structure, a chance to help others find their way home, just as I finally had. I reached for my phone and dialed the number on the card. As it rang, I watched a shooting star trace its path across the night sky. Like that star, I traveled a long way through darkness. But unlike it, I wasn't burning out. I was just beginning to shine.